Welcome to Physicians Keepers, where we as a physician community tackle the challenges that are unique to us by creating awareness and finding solutions from our experiences. We also learn to look out for our fellow physicians to ensure that no one is left behind. I am your host, Dr. Ali. Stay tuned and enjoy the episode.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Physicians Keepers. I am your host, Dr. Ali, and I'm so excited to have you here listening at another episode. And I have Dr. Esoimeme, who has been so kind to come on this episode and to share her story. Now, those of you that have been following us from our previous episodes, we have been talking about bullying that occurs, especially in the setting of physician training. We are hearing real life stories of individuals who have gone through this, so that you know it's not just a statistic. Like, it's not just something people just say it happens. No, it happens to real people. And the goal of this is to bring these discussions out in the open so that we can find tangible solutions, so that based on what we have experienced, we can say, okay, someone else should not experience this because this should be put in place so it doesn't happen. So Dr. Esoimeme, can you please introduce yourself and just tell us briefly who you are, where you're from?
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm currently in Georgia, where I practice as an internal medicine physician, but I am Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria, lived in Nigeria, went to med school in Nigeria, and then I moved to the US for my master's. And then I did a PhD in public health and then transitioned back into medicine. I did my internal medicine residency, and now I'm working as an internal medicine physician. I see patients in the outpatient setting.
Okay, awesome. So, you trained in Nigeria. Where in Nigeria did you?
I trained in Ambrose Ali University.
University. Awesome. So, what your journey here? If we can get a little bit of background, what inspired you in the first place to even move to the States?
So I that's an interesting question because when I was in Nigeria, I did my NYC, my house job, and then my NYC, it was more public health that I did. And so I moved to the US to do my master's because I wanted to do more public health. And then my master's was in global health, which I found very interesting. But just because of the way the med school situation is organized in Nigeria, like when you're 17, you're already in med school.
Yeah.
So I felt like a part of me was missing, right? I was a doctor, but I wasn't a doctor. I just felt like I needed to go that full cycle. But I also wanted to pursue public health to the highest level possible. So I did my PhD, and then I decided to go back into medicine. So now I kind of use all of my knowledge and experience where I am today.
That is awesome. So now you did public health. So it sounds like it did take you a while before you finally went back into medicine.
It did.
Okay. So what was that transition like for you? Like getting back into the swing of things?
So it took me like 10 years. So between my master's program and my PhD program, I had to find time to write my USMLE exams, the step 1, step 2. And then also I didn't want to leave my program. I wanted to complete the program I was in because it was something I wanted. I wasn't just marking time. I love public health. So I completed that program and then did my exams. I did pretty okay. And then moved into residency because those exams are a testament to your intellect. Like if you were to sit, I didn't do med school in the US.
Yeah.
But if after schooling in another country, I can take those exams, I felt that means, I was qualified to practice, to get into residency so I could practice medicine in the US. So it was not an easy transition.
No, it could have.
After.
Those are even too. Most of the people that do public health do not even like clinical medicine, and those that do clinical medicine don't like public health. So you are actually a rare breed finding someone that actually does, because I public health, oh no, you could not catch me anywhere near public health. But so you're a rare breed.
No, it depends. It depends on your experience, right? So the public health I did was more like programs because that was global health.
Yeah.
It was more programs. And then when I got to my core PhD, my research is on physician-patient relationship, shared decision making, negotiation, and that's in line with what I do today. So
Actually is, yeah.
yeah. So you see, you could have done public health.
That's a conversation for another day. Oh, tell me about like when did you encounter bullying? Like how did that play out for you coming in as a foreign graduate? Like just tell us your story.
So I'm Nigerian and there's a Nigerian mindset. Let's just put that out there, right? So when you get critiqued, you don't play victim fast. You're like, okay, what can I do better? What can I do better? And so it took me a while to realize I was being bullied. It took me a while before I realized I was an outsider in my program.
Mhm.
Because I remember when I knew I matched into my program, I was like super excited. I was like, oh, these people are gonna be like my family, my best friends for the next 3 years.
You got my back. That's actually.
Yes, I created a WhatsApp group, added everybody, reached out to all the people before we even started. I had moved to where I trained, reached out to them, had them over for dinner just so we could connect before
Yeah.
the program and just, have that relationship. And then maybe like 3 months into the program, I found out that everybody had a WhatsApp group I wasn't a part of. So that's why I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, because it was 10 years, I and I've been in school, I've been in training, and I know the only way you can get better is when you show people where you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
Get it program. I'm like, hey, I would need help. It's been 10 years since I left medical school.
Yeah.
These things I'm not really, but you know what?
I'm willing to do the work.
I'm a fast learner. And I have this mantra that knowledge is not congenital, it's acquired. So
Wait,
I
wait. You just said something now that makes me think that we were sisters somewhere. No, honestly, because I mean, I just had to press ball. It's just when I was going through what I was going through, and I called a friend of mine, and I was just feeling so bad about myself. And what you said was exactly what I promise you. I'm not making this up. Exactly what she told me. She's like, Ayube, knowledge is not congenital.
it's acquired.
You were not born with this. Like, whatever you don't know, you learn.
Yes.
And it's funny because as part of what we're doing, Physicians Keepers, I have a whole talk on, or pretty much a whole write-up on knowledge is not congenital. Like
Really?
when you said it, it just clicked. I was like,
It's been a mantra since I've been in medical school. It's just something that I tell myself, knowledge is not congenital. I didn't know I was not born a doctor. I wasn't born a public health specialist.
Yeah.
All of the things I learned along the way. But however, even though I knew I was coming 10, I felt I was gonna be behind my classmates who were much more younger graduates. I knew I was a fast learner. I knew I was a team player.
Yeah.
I knew I was hardworking. I knew what my strengths were. So even though I was nervous, I knew I had what it took to succeed.
Yeah.
So because of that mindset, I wasn't nervous. Showing my vulnerability, saying, "Hey, I don't know this," because I knew
Teach me. Yeah.
I'll know it. So yeah.
It's like sometimes I'm on that fence now where I guess in the right setting, in the right program, that works. Telling people that you don't know this because you want to know. You don't want to make mistakes. You want to be the best physician that you can be. You don't want to hide the fact that, look, there's a knowledge deficit. And so it makes sense that if you're in the right program, that is stuff that you would tell someone.
Correct.
But in the wrong hands, in the wrong program, that can then be used as a weapon
Yes.
against you.
Yes.
Whereas
Yes.
like an evaluation comes and it's like, she's deficit. And the only reason that happens because you said it.
Correct. Because you said it. Not and you know, so one thing I like about, like, when I go through stuff, it's either I win or I learn. And so that was where I knew the meaning of being favored or not being favored. It became clear to me.
Yeah.
So even though I know I was bullied, some of the things were my fault, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't perfect. Those mistakes were mine. So well, not all the mistakes, some of the mistakes were mine. Like some of the knowledge deficits, they were mine, right? However, when you are not favored, right, all your mistakes are maximized and all your mistakes are minimized, right? I remember being
Yeah, they to the choir with that.
Yes. I remember being in the ICU and we had a patient that had to be transferred. I made sure I kept calling and calling, and I made sure that patient was transferred in my very eyes. Because the bullying happens on different levels.
It
could
does.
happen at the level of nurses. It could happen at the level of residents. It could happen at the level of attendants. It could happen at the level of your upper level or your classmates, right? So I faced all the different levels of bullying,
Oh,
you know. But in my very eyes, I saw one of the nurses who knew I called. And she picked up the phone. Oh, she called another doctor's name. Oh, she's such a miracle worker. She called and made sure this patient got transferred. I just looked, I'm like, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So taking credit, I mean, it's another form of it. You do something and then the credit is not given to you.
Not given. But if I show up 1 minute late, my program director will be aware that I came in late. So my strengths were minimized and then my weaknesses were maximized.
We're amplified. Yes. I can totally relate to that because, I mean, in one experience I had, I forgot the pager. I left the pager somewhere removed to, and then it was like, oh my God, like the pager. Oh, how could you forget the pager? Like I thought the patient died. Like the way it was, like I thought it was some cardinal sin. Only for later on, I discovered that some of my colleagues, they forgot. Oh, you didn't put a discharge summary. Oh my God, the world has ended before the patient left. It's been 3 days. You would think the patient showed up at something. No, it was just, oh, the discharge summary is not in. And this is a simple thing. You could have said, oh, yeah, you forgot this. I mean,
Yeah.
put it in.
And giving the workload that we had, as especially because most of this bullying would happen when you are in your infant year and you are at the bottom of the food chain. You are you are the the workhorse. You do everything. So things fall through the cracks. Number one, there's also this knowledge gap. You're still learning. There's a lot of scut work you're doing. Then there's a lot of learning. So things happen, but that's where if you are in a good program, that's where you get that support, so you can keep growing and keep doing better.
Yeah.
You know,
Programs matter. I mean, honestly, one bad program, one bad resident, one bad attendant can ruin an individual's life. It just takes one person. I said yours was a case of multiple levels. Mine was a case of one who then amplified. And then the residents talk.
So you see, that's why I like this guy, Simon Sinek. And he has this culture that he wants most organizations to take on.
Yeah.
And that kind of resonates with who I am as a person. So if someone does something wrong, why don't you find out why?
Yeah.
Rather than, everyone tags that person as, oh, that's that person who.
Yeah.
But, and you haven't, 90% of the people who repeat that tag, they haven't even experienced it.
No, they haven't.
And so you already have that. So, and then when you show up and you just show just 1/10 of that thing, they're like, oh yeah, they already said that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're already anticipating your failure
Correct.
even before, like, and this is not. And I wish, honestly, you wish that residency programs would do better with that. It's like when an intern shows up, don't do that huddle that you do, where you sit down as third years and start dissecting them. It's like, oh, did you see that intern? Can you imagine what she did? Oh, who is the strong intern? Who is the weak intern?
Right,
You,
right,
you don't
right.
know that.
And this, look, if you're asking who is the strong and who is the weak intern, so you know who to mentor,
That's
that's a
different.
different ball game entirely. But
Yes.
just asking who is strong and who's weak, so you know who to treat poorly.
Yes. Or who to say, look, I don't want to work with this one.
Correct.
Like, don't give me this one to work with. Like, give me somebody else. It's
And people forget that they were once interns, right? You
get
also, and like 2 years ago, 1 year ago, that was you. You know, no, residency was an interesting time in my life. Very
so
interesting.
when you figured out that this was happening, like, what was your response? Like, what did you do? Like,
So, so I think so one thing happened one time. They were like all the residents, first, second, third years. They were all in the call room, and then one of the biggest bullies of all, she was just there saying crap about me. And then one of my classmates walked up to me. He was like, "Hey, what's the deal with this girl? She was just saying crap about you." And then I'm like, all right. I went to my program director and I reported. I said, if she has an issue with me, she should walk up to me. It's just unprofessional for you to say crap about me in the call room. There were med students, there was, and so my program director said she was going to talk to her. And so I made sure I took it up to the next level, just so there is a line that I reported. So
Yeah.
I made sure I talked to my program director about it, and she said she was going to talk to the girl.
But I mean, that's good because I would say that's one step that I didn't take. I was just too petrified. I was like, what would that look like? I didn't want to, in IMG, you just get in, you don't want to get into trouble. You're like, and so like when I went to the first chain, they were like, deal with it. So I was like, okay. I remember sitting in front of my program director and she asked me, she's like, did everyone treat you okay? But I was at that time, like, I didn't know if that was a trick question. No, honestly. Like, I didn't know if they were setting me up to say I couldn't work with people. So I was like, well, I got help from so and so and so. And that was where I left it.
Oh no, and oh no, I would say what I'm going through. I would say what I like.
Which I think is that definitely the right process.
Yes, probably maybe because if I hadn't gone into residency, I would have already I was done with my PhD. Was I was not naive, I was not young. And even though I wanted the residency, I really wanted to practice medicine, I had fallback, right? I can always go back. I had fallback.
Sure.
I didn't want to be kicked out, but I still had that. So maybe that because I was older, I had that. It made it easier for me to speak up for myself. But yeah.
So what happened when that happened? What did she eventually come to you? Like, how did you?
How did that end?
Yes.
Um so I was talking to another of my attendants. I knew the whole thing came up again, and I said, I truly do not know why this girl is just so mean to me. She was like, well, you would never know. Some things you would never know. And then my program director had asked her to apologize to me. So she was like, oh, maybe like months after. Oh, Gloria. Yeah. I just need to apologize to you for what happened. And she said, you know how someone says something in, but I'm like, what are you apologizing for?
So you never confronted her directly?
No, I just asked her, I'm like, what are you apologizing for? And she walked away. She was like, we'll talk. And she walked away. Because for me, an apology is not an apology, except I know what you're sorry about. Are you sorry that,
You're caught saying
oh,
something.
yeah, so what exactly is it? You know? And this was the same person who, the way our program was structured was that sometimes you could work like 12 days in a row, and then you have your golden weekend or however that was. And I had my golden weekend, and she was angry. She was calling everybody, how come she has 3 days off? No, I had 3 days off, not two. I'm like, but you went, because we're in the same team. I said, you were here. I was here. You had your days off, you came back, I was here. You had days off again, and I was here. Now I have 3 days off, and you were angry. So the next time I worked with her, when I had day off, I didn't tell her I wasn't showing up at work the next day. I'm like, she doesn't deserve to know. And then that was used against me. They said, "Oh, you don't know how to communicate. You didn't tell your upper level that you were not gonna be." I said, "Yes, I did not tell her on purpose, because when I told her, she was calling everybody to make sure I was back at work. So I did not think she deserved to know I was having a day off."
Do you think your program had your back? Would you say so?
That's a trick question. Jesus had my back. Jesus, the good Lord had my back. And but there were people who were nice to me, because they were, and it came in places I least expected it to come from, right? People who had no business being nice to me were just like super nice to me. And some people who were mean to me at some point flipped around, and they just, when they knew me,
Yeah.
before it was gossip, right? And when they knew me, it was just like one of my ICU attendants. He was just mean to me my first time in the ICU. But afterwards, he was just like the kindest and the most helpful person afterwards.
So you think
So
he was mean to you because of what he had heard? And then
sometimes
when he got to know you, he was like,
you,
oh,
you never can tell, right? You never can tell what people are thinking. I don't know why. I just
yeah.
knew he was mean to me. It's like, once I was blind, now I can see. Once he was mean to me, later he stopped mean to me. So
Yeah, I'm excited. It's sad that as residents, like I said, and knowing how hard it is to training, because you're going in to learn, you're going in to help people. Then when you're faced with such hostility, from, like I said, people that you think, because here you are creating a WhatsApp group, like thinking, hey, let me bond, like, let me just show these people who I am, let me know that, I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to, I'm not trying to hide my deficits. I
no,
want to be the best doctor I can be. Like, hey, teach me this. But then for you to turn around and be, punished for it. And I think it's sad. I mean, I remember this. I remember this encounter so well. It's like I said, they had done that huddle, right? They done that huddle where they're like, oh, this resident, this whatever, like, you know, didn't do well or something to that effect. That's put an X on that individual. And so it came around that, this was way after my bully had left and time had passed. I got an opportunity to work with a different resident. Now, at that time, it so happened that she was undergoing some home issues. She was a third year then. I was a second year. And she was undergoing, your third years are supposed to be the ones technically, more training the first years. And so she had her hands full with a couple of things at home. So this was during the inpatient wards. And she could only come in by round start by 8. Because of the things going on at home, she could only make it by 7:45, 8 o'clock. So basically I was the one running the show until she came. Like I had to be the one going to see all the patients, both mine and the first year, and doing all that, like making sure everything. So when she came, everything had already been done. All patients had already been seen. She just needed to show up. So after the rotation, she called me and said, you did very well. That let me confess to you. When I heard that I was going to work with you, I initially asked for somebody else, the person I worked with in first year, because um so and so had told me that you would not be able to do this. And because of my situation, I felt this was not going to happen. It's going to be a disaster.
yeah,
But then I ended up doing half of her work, or
right,
most of her work, and I did it great. And,
right.
and I did it great. And so she had to say, I'm sorry. the impression that I was giving of you was wrong.
Yeah.
And I actually said I didn't want to work with you, but I'm actually glad that I did.
Yeah.
So it's sad that, if as physicians, I would think that, okay, if you felt that, okay, if you're that strong, right, and you felt that this resident had a problem, why don't you say, why don't I help her? I mean, why don't I?
I think it's all just in, hindsight. Now we're done with residency. Now we're practicing. They were also insecure.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were also insecure. Like if you are secure, then why would you be a bully?
Yeah.
So that's just they will and whatever people will come from, we're all from different places, we're all different kinds of people, but there's still that because some like the girl who was like the meanest person in my program, she was just a year ahead of me.
Yeah.
So it's not like she had this wealth of knowledge. Like I was not impressed. Because she was very fast. She was very fast, but I was not impressed by her wealth of knowledge. She was very organized as a person. That was her strength.
Yep.
But she was not knowledgeable. It's not like when there's a case, she's just we all go to up to date together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a bunch of insecure people. But that's where I feel like because it's like in quotes, it's not the same thing because we're all adults, we're all grown. I was old, So, but that's where the faculty should come in and try to create a culture
Yeah.
where there's zero bullying,
Yeah.
where it should not be common. I was able to speak up for myself. I was
Yeah.
able to push for myself. I have a voice, right? But there should be that avenue where they say, if you feel bullied, come report to me. It should be something that's said all the time.
Be emphasized.
You-
Yeah.
It should create an anti-bullying program, not like it shouldn't be, oh, now you're being bullied, come report. No, it should be proactive to say this program is a no bullying program.
Yeah.
Right. And if you took in residents who are weak, you've taken them in.
Yeah.
Right. So rather than putting an X on their head, like, oh, this is a weak student, it's like, all right. So, because they knew I was 10 years, I didn't hide the year I graduated from it.
Yeah.
You knew I was that.
Yeah.
You felt I had it in me to succeed. And I'm done, right? It means they were right. So rather than put me in a box, right? Why not say, all right, Gloria, we know this, we give you 2 months, and these are the materials I want you to go over. And if I don't do that, then you can say, all right, I am irresponsible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there should be whatever, if you know you can't cater to residents who are whatever, don't take them in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you know why? Even more, I feel like the highest disservice done to me as a resident was I did not trust the feedback I got. Right? And that was my loss, right?
Yeah.
And because it would take like extra layers of self-reflection. I'm like, okay, maybe this is stuff. She doesn't get along with people. I'm like, bull crap. And once I see that, right, because I know I am a people person, like
Yeah.
I'm from a huge family. I grew up with like so many people before me, people after me. Like I'm just used to people because that's just how life dealt me. Which
Yeah.
So now, and my strength as a person I like people.
Yeah, people
And
person.
all of a sudden, the top on the list is she doesn't get along with people. But the rest, it's not going to make sense to me. And maybe those were correct, right? Some of the
Yeah.
things would have been, because if there's no trust, how can I take your feedback when they
Yeah. How can you grow? I mean, there's no way to bring it out. Yeah.
So I had to shift all of I was there, my program learning, but my true upper levels were not in my program. I was reaching out to friends in other programs. Like when I don't know stuff, I'm texting my friends. I'm like, hey, this is what I think. What do you guys think? And they're like, all right, you're on the right path. Or they're like, no, they call me. They're like, all right, I'll call you in the evening. Let's go over stuff together.
Yeah.
So that's how and once I knew everyone was talking about me behind my back, I was like, you know what, I'm done with this program.
And they were not interested in your growth. Like they were not interested in, yeah. Yeah.
And everyone felt like, and something else they do in some residency programs, they feel like if you are an intern, that you are a child and you're trying to give me real life advice when you haven't even gone the road I've gone through. Oh, you're gonna learn, Gloria, when you get older. Well, Bob is older than you. What do you mean when I get older? You're just 1 year ahead of me in resident, and you're telling me, oh, when you get older, Gloria, then you're gonna understand how people behave. I'm like, when I get older? All I needed was fine. If there was a deficit in my character or in my behavior, I want to grow. You're never too old to grow, right?
No. Yeah.
But not when what you're saying is wrong in the first place.
Yeah. And
First
it's
of
more likely hearsay from someone, not even a direct. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, sometimes when you hear people's stories, right, it just takes you back to your experiences, and it's like you feel exactly. I mean, I remember one of the first interviews I did with this, and the doctor I interviewed, I mean, it's like we could have walked each other's paths. Like it's like we could have walked each other's paths. We just, and you know, the funny thing is that when you're going through it, you feel alone
So
at that time.
let me tell you something that happened to me. So just because of because I don't know how your program was, mine was such that um the intern would first go round, you would look at your chart, then you go around and then you come back and you pre-round with your upper level. Um the longer I stayed in the program, the more I felt like an outsider. So it got to a point like, and okay, just to put it out there, I was the only Black person in my whole program, first, second, and third year. I was the only Black person there. So I didn't. It wasn't an issue until I realized, oh, they have their own group. I'm not a
Yeah.
Black. They have their own. So I'm like, all right, it's fine. I can be by myself. So
Yeah.
what I would do was before I would pray around with everybody, and but I found a place where I would go pray around and I'll just do my stuff, and then I would come back and meet the upper level and then go over stuff with them. And then this when I was now a second year, another Black girl joined the program. And then one day I was just walking by, I saw her sitting on the exact spot where I used to sit. And she was pre-rounding.
Yeah.
And I'm, why are you here? She said, you know what? I just feel like I need to be by myself. I need to just get all of this by myself, and then I'll go back. And I'm like, and then
That's you.
unfortunately, this another Black kid came when I was in my third year. I was the first Black person. My second year, there was a Black girl. She was from Ghana. Then the third year, there was a guy. He didn't know to go find that spot,
Yeah.
and he ended up being extended because he didn't know how to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Now, did you, from a mental standpoint, right? Because, and this is something that, and I guess you had some more experience than some of us who went through this initially in terms of just life experiences, doing a PhD and being in, a different environment before residency. Did you go through any anxiety, depression, like mental health struggles with all this going on?
So I think I would say so. The first time I think I had a panic attack. I was in the ICU. That's when that attending was mean to me. Maybe he was justified in, no, he wasn't. There's no justification. Goodness, I take that back. Yeah.
No, yeah, we never.
Yes.
There's no justification being mean to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I gathered the first day. No one had given me any orientation on the ICU. I gathered, there was this guy who was he was a third year but was off cycle, was getting ready to go, so he really wasn't there anymore. So they gave me, there was a patient who had been in the ICU for maybe 30 days or for a while. And he split the patients in the ICU equally between me and him my first day.
Yeah.
And before I could go through because I'm starting, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so what happened with this patient going through? The next thing I looked at, it was almost time for the antibiotic. So I turned to him. I said, look, I'm struggling here. I need help. He's like, oh, you'll be fine, Gloria. You'll be fine. No, 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 no. And then I started having a panic attack because I'm like, that was the first, and then that whole ICU thing. From there, it just turned to PTSD. Like when I think of ICU, I just have this feeling because the attending came, he tore me into pieces. Not not considering it was my first day in the ICU.
Yeah.
You s- and then that passed. I felt okay, it was my fault. I should have, I knew it wasn't my fault, but you still have to take some responsibility,
Yeah.
right? Not everything it was done to us, right? So I remember when I was in my second year, um, everybody I worked with, when everyone's talked about you, and then my classmates, it was not like, oh, you all think you can now bully on me. It just got too much, and I went and I told my program director. I said, I think what I'm going through at this point, it's a little bit much. I need some time. And she was generous. She said, take you. I thought she gave me 1 week. I thought I was asking for a day.
Yeah.
She gave me 1 week. She was like, well, you need to go talk to somebody. And then I went to, because I know there was a physician who sees physicians. That's what she did. And so I went to talk to somebody, and she just gave me some tips like, okay, do let me put the tips here so whoever listens, they can practice
Yeah.
the.
Yeah.
And one of the things she said was, if you don't have friends in your, because I'm not where I train, I'm Nigerian, so I'm not from there. I didn't have
Yeah.
family because I was by myself. I didn't have family. I didn't have friends. I was hoping my friends would be.
Your fellow resident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she said, you know what? Look for friends outside the program. Have a life outside the program.
Yeah.
Have things you do outside the program. So that way, even if you don't have that support from the program, you still have support from outside.
Outside, right? Yeah.
Yes. And she said, don't pick a fight. Your time there is very limited. If someone talks badly about you, ask them why. Don't just let things. I was doing all of those before, but the main thing that helped me was I found friends outside the program. So the program became it was
It wasn't your life then.
yes, it was a big part of my learning, but I still had people who were supporting me outside, and then I had life outside the program. So I would come, and it was the best thing that happened to me actually, because it made me stop thinking as a resident. I started thinking like an attending, like people who had not decided on getting their jobs. I already got because the people I was talking to, they were people who were no longer at my level. They were people who had already gone through residency.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an awesome advice though. It's like, because when it seems like residency becomes your life, right? When you start to hear words being thrown around like probation, like this, like that, you
Your life
just
is over.
yeah, you feel like life is ended.
Failure.
Like life is ended. Oh my God, this is my whole life.
Yes, what
And my
else?
whole life's about to be taken away from me.
Correct.
Right. But then when you have some support, you understand that, okay, it's an important part of my life, but it's not everything.
Right.
There are things outside of here that I can find joy in, that if I wish this really works out, but just in case it doesn't work out because of this environment, I know I have people to fall back on. Like I have people to fall to, people that can encourage me. So that is really awesome advice. That is really awesome advice. And like I said,
And something else I would tell people who are going through bullying or feeling insecure is go back and do an inventory on who you are before you get into that program. Whatever, who was I before this program? And remember all the times, even if you were not the best student in your class, you survived medical school. Even if you were not the best, you didn't score like c- perfect points in the USMLE. Your scores were enough to get into residency. So you are good enough. You are good enough. You are a doctor. You have the intellect. You have what it takes, and don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Do not forget. It's a case of do not forget who you are because of where you are.
you're preaching my message.
Yeah.
I'm preaching. I had this whole talk in my head written down. I was like, say, dear resident or student, you are not stupid.
No, you're not.
You're not stupid. Like you are in a place that you are in a position, either as a medical student or a resident, that other people wanted to get into.
They couldn't.
They couldn't. I mean,
Yeah.
you, out of everyone that had this dream and desire, I couldn't make it. You are here. Like, don't make anyone make you feel like you're stupid. I mean, the fact that you could even make a decision and work towards it to say, I want to be a doctor. I know that it's going to be a hard and it's going to be a very long process, but I'm willing to do the work. I'm willing to commit. You did exams, and you got to that point. You are not stupid, and then falls into that line. Knowledge is not congenital.
It's not. It's
It's
acquired.
it's acquired. And one of the things that I wish we could hammer on, especially doctors who are in academic settings,
Yeah.
to cheat and to train, is that teaching is a privilege. To be able to pass knowledge is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege for you. And the way you pass that knowledge matters.
It does. Because sometimes the way people pass knowledge across, the things you don't know, you're like, I'm not gonna ask this person. I'm just gonna act like I know what I'm doing. Meanwhile, you don't know. You're just like, you're scared. You're
And
scared.
this is patient care, right? You want to know.
And you're there to learn.
Yes.
I remember one of my attendings, she called me. That was I was still at my first year. She called me, she was like, oh well, Gloria, I need to talk to you. I'm like, all right. They said there are some things you don't know. I looked her in the eyes. I said, yes, there are things I don't know. I said, if I knew everything, I would be here. I would have started my private practice across the street. I said, I would have started my private across the street. There are so many things I don't know. That's why I'm an intern. She was like, fair enough.
We should have been friends back then, where I could have gotten some of this your boat.
Because how are you telling me there are things I don't know? Yes, I'm an intern. That's why I'm here. If I knew everything, I would have started my private practice right across the street.
What did she say?
Like, well, fair enough. But that's right. Like if I and this was maybe like just the begin. So if they were maybe my first few, maybe I was there. They're like, oh Gloria, we've told. I said if you tell me stuff once and you have to tell me again, shame on me.
Yeah.
Right? Or I'm lazy. I don't show up when I'm
You don't
supposed to.
show up. You're
That I would
slacking. Yeah.
Right, that I will be quiet because I know. But I'm just here to learn, and I've already told you guys that it's been a while. I did.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? Even the things I was just feeling insecure over nothing because I had knowledge. I had practiced medicine in Nigeria, right? And I had studied, so I knew much more than I thought I knew.
You
Just because I felt, oh, it's been 10 years, and then it just
yeah.
but
The mindset behind it. Yeah. And so with my experience, right, I discovered like that. And this is one thing but especially IMGs, right? Not just, anyone, but IMGs is that confidence is not one thing that is taught to us in medical school. If usually people are confident, it's usually from just who they are. Like they don't teach you to talk, to assert yourself.
no, they teach you not. If you are, so cultures are different, right? So if you are, so American culture, you're expected to speak up the more
Yes.
you are. But in
Yes.
Nigeria, before you ask a question, you need to almost know the answer before you ask.
Yes.
Just because so
yeah.
correct. So knowing to do that switch is something that people who are from other cultures do not know. I remember this is different. When I was in grad school, like I wouldn't talk in class because and people would say stuff, I'll just laugh, that's so dumb. How could someone even say that?
Mhm.
Until I saw the teaching assistant for every time someone raised their hand and say stuff, and they would give them points. I'm like, really? That was a game changer.
They also give you points for keeping quiet. There are no points for not speaking up.
Exactly.
I learned that the hard way, right? Whereas I walk, and like I said, because I taught my fellow interns knew more than me. I honestly did. The only difference between me and them was their confidence.
But what breeds?
Because they're the system. Like they
And yeah, they didn't feel not because they didn't feel disadvantaged.
no, yeah, probably yes. Like I said,
because Because there are some intrinsic things in us, right? Confidence can be, you can be confident 1 second, you could lose it. You may not have it, you can gain it. So we felt we were disadvantaged.
Yes.
And sometimes people just feel, oh, I have been out of school for like 10 years. I'm so grateful they gave me an opportunity. And you're just so thankful.
And do me a favor right here. It's like,
Yes.
mhm.
But you know the shortage of doctors we have in America? Please. There's a shortage. I am well, yes, I am grateful. I am grateful I had an opportunity to train. I am grateful that I went through the program. I came out. I am grateful because we learned a lot because we had very sick patients.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I can see any patient anywhere and
Yeah.
yes, I can manage that case and I know what to do.
To do.
Sometimes what to do is knowing when to refer. I know my limits. So I am grateful for that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm not grateful for being bullied.
Yeah. No. But here's where I look at it, right? Because back then when I was asking myself, like, why me? Like, why am I going through this? Like,
Yeah.
why maybe if I went in a different program, because then I used to hear of some of my classmates who were in programs and they were like, oh my God, like you see, they were going like in pictures, they'll go to like bowling together, like you would see them with their attendant doctors and they look like they are born
Having fun. Yeah.
Yes, and you would see interaction.
That I feel sad that I don't have that. I feel sad. I feel like that's something I missed on. Like
I can relate.
it's like some kids never went to prom, right? You can never go back and redo it, right? So I don't have that experience, and because it was something I truly wanted because I had even created a group. I thought this were gonna be my family for the rest of my life. Now I don't even remember the names because I'm like I don't even want to remember these people.
You just block them out. Yes, I mean, like I said, it's that confidence thing you have to, and I wish, I could tell people it's know who. Let me just put it this way: know who to be vulnerable with. It's not everyone. I don't believe like I said in every
Not everybody deserves to know your weakness.
Not everybody. Yeah. Not everybody. Some people, that is the weapon of mass destruction that they will use against you. So know that, okay, I have a problem, but also find out who can I confide in? Like, who can I say, hey, help me? Like, I need to grow in this area. I need to develop because giving that information, putting that information in the wrong hands,
it's ammunition,
can be very detrimental. Yeah, because you would be shocked, So I mean,
however, if programs if programs purposefully create an environment where people show their vulnerabilities, then it won't be news. If as an attending physician, you stand there, you're like, you know what, I don't know this. Let's bring why don't you look into up to date? Let's see what the answer is. Tomorrow, when that intern is not sure, they would be confident to say, you know what, I'm not sure because the attending has shown that they're human. When you're not sure, you're like, well, go read about it. As the attending, when you don't know, you're like, go read it about it.
When you had no clue. And so there was one attendant I would say that I really appreciated him for. And he came in, I think, during my second or third year. I wish it was around my first year, because I was like, if he were around, like, things would have been easier for me,
Yeah.
When he didn't know anything, he would tell you. He was like, oh, I'm going to study this. Tomorrow, we're going to figure it out together. And that was his approach. And then the next day, like I said, he would go and do his homework.
Right.
And he would come back and he's like, I'm going to teach you. Like, we are going to learn this because I've learned it, So then you're not afraid when he asks you like it. I'm like, no, I'm not really sure about this because he's already shown you that side. So you know that it's normal.
Not
know everything.
Not everyone should be training people. Most of the people who are in training should not be. They should just make it.
Or yeah, like I said, the goal of physicians keepers, one of the things that we talk about, I say, okay, this is a big problem. How can we fix it? I believe that every program should have, starting from the second year, the third year, anyone who is going to be in charge of teacher training should have them go through a training model for teaching.
Yeah. I agree.
You should have them because you just employ someone as an attendant doctor. You don't know if they know how to teach. You don't know nothing. You just say they just come look, but they have residents they're going to teach. But you teaching is a skill.
It is a skill.
It's a skill. People go to school for this. Teaching is a skill.
Correct. Even in our PhD program, we had to go through you first be a teaching assistant and all of that. But however, there was a program that's called Preparing Future Faculty, where you had to learn how to be faculty. You had to learn how to teach people. Yeah. So, and it's not residency is still, that's like the almost the highest level of teaching you could
It
do.
is.
Teaching people how to save lives.
It
So
is.
they should. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I said I'm hoping that this is something that down the line in the future we can those of us that have been through stuff like this can come up with something to say, hey, this is a training module like this because if people don't know is so let's look at from if we're going into the 10 Commandments. For those of you that know scripture, people already knew what was wrong, but they still did it anyway. But when there was something in writing that said this is wrong,
Yeah.
then there was more of a reverence that we should not do it because we've already been commanded in writing that should not be done. People already know that you need to treat people right. People already know that you don't need to bully people. But until there's some form of education or teaching or training on that, then even though they know it's wrong, it'll still keep happening at a higher scale.
Yeah, there would be like some checking. And then also the person who is being bullied would have a voice.
Yes.
Because then sometimes when you can name what's happening, it becomes easier
Yeah.
for you. Because sometimes you're like, oh, I don't really know. I just don't know how I feel. I just like my program. But you don't know it's bullying. But when we start saying, if this happens, you are being bullied,
Yes.
and people speak more.
Yes. If you're being harshly criticized, if you're not, if, like you said, the things you do right are not being valued, and then the things you do wrong are being amplified, they're setting, if they're unrealistic expectations are being set for you, that's a form of bullying, repetitive behavior. Right? It's not a one-time off thing. Someone just gets mad at you, maybe because something bad happens to them in their house, your spouse got mad at them, and you're the only one around for them to vent on. When it's repetitive, then that is bullying. Yeah. So I'm really, really glad to have this topic. Is there anything else before we leave this conversation? I know we've talked a lot that you just want to share, and just leave out there as as a solution, or just to encourage someone who may be going through the same thing that you went through. I know you've already shared quite a lot, and like I said, there's just already a wealth of experience, and I'm sure that people who listen would highly benefit from.
So like you and I, we are no longer in training, and I'm not in a teaching program. I hope one day to go back into.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, there was a time I was a second year, because when you are a second year, you have more power,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then up to third year. So what I would like to advocate for is, if you've been through it, right? When you see someone being bullied, speak up.
Yeah.
Don't try to be one of the cool kids. Oh no, thank God I'm no longer the
This is not me. It's not me.
oh Lord, thank God it's not me. No.
Yeah.
Anytime you see evil happening and you're quiet, you are part of the problem.
Sure.
That's why I wanted to be on this podcast. Like, even though I'm not doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
just talking about it,
Yeah.
right? Just when they're some criticisms are correct. They could say, "Oh, I told that person XYZ," but when it becomes repetitive, and then you're trying to give that person you're trying to stigmatize that person, that's when it's wrong. That's
Yeah.
when you speak up.
Yeah.
That's a second year student, you can start. If as a first year student, because it was one of my colleagues who came and told me, I was like, "Hey, Gloria, I didn't like how this girl was talking about."
Yeah.
You should speak up. You don't have to be done with residency before you
Yeah.
start.
That's awesome advice, because honestly, one of the things when I didn't have my voice, because I said there were people who knew what was happening with me with this fellow resident, but they didn't speak up for me.
Yeah.
I would tell them, I'll be like, "Can you believe that this happened?" They're like, "Oh my God, that happened to you? Oh wow!" And that's where it ended.
Yeah.
Like, and they were in a position to either go talk to the person.
Or take it to
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
And so they didn't. So I kept wishing that someone, like I said, because I
Rescue
was,
you.
yes, I was scared. I didn't feel like I could do it for myself. I really wish that someone could be there for me. Someone could help me where I felt like I needed help. And so that's kind of like, so that speaks to the backbone of, physicians keepers, right? Why tag? Because I wanted someone to be, to be a keeper for me.
Right.
Yes, I wanted someone to look out for me. I mean, I'm not saying look out for me where you have to hold my hand and carry me through everything. No, something horrible was happening to me. Something bad was happening to me by another doctor. Like, I just felt that, you should have cared enough to just say, hey, you know,
Could you just let this girl be?
like, just like, stop it. Like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's one thing when you're telling me, like, okay, go do your work. Of course, I'm supposed to do my work. I know that. But then when you're seeing that what's happening to me, it's unjust.
Correct.
Like, speak up. And so that's very important. Like I said, if you are a physician and you see this happening, and so you may never know what it feels like to happen to you, but we are at this end telling you that it's a horrible experience.
Yeah.
So if you see it happening to someone else, you need to speak up. Like, you need to talk to them. You need to say, hey, don't.
And if you can't, and if you are, so maybe you're both like first years and you see it happening, maybe you are the lucky one who is being favored, right? And you see it happening. Even if you're scared of talking to that upper level who's being mean, you can go talk to an attendant and say, hey, I saw this and I didn't feel comfortable getting quiet. Do you mind looking into it?
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully programs would learn so that there will not be any type of blowback or repercussion to people that do come and say, hey, we noticed this happening with this federal resident, so that people will be confident. Because if people feel like they're going to be targeted because they went to, quote unquote, report, then they wouldn't do anything about it. So people should feel free where they should not be, for lack of a better word, if they're whistleblower, is another word they use now, that, there will not be any repercussions to them. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And for the most part, it's there's usually one person who's like the target every year. Like there's one person who is a target, and the others are just kind of lucky. So just I just don't want people to be scared.
Yeah.
And if something happens, let us know. We're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let us know. Yes, yes, that's yes. Whoever listens to this podcast and then you report and your program picks on you, let us know.
Absolutely. I mean, we need to have a network where, or some advocacy, right? Some advocacy group where it says, hey, if this is happening, I don't feel alone. I know that I can get resources from here. I can talk to this group of individuals, and I know that I will have a set of people that will have my back. So
Yeah.
those will be things that definitely in the future, like I said, we need to build, and by the grace of God, we would, at least, like I said, just having this conversation, I believe, goes a long way in shining a light on this and tackling bullying, so that in training programs, not just in the States, because we know this happens everywhere.
It happens everywhere.
Everywhere, so that.
But the difference there is in some places it happens to everybody equally. Nigeria is just general bullying.
Only a few are left unscathed.
It's like that. And so that doesn't hurt you because you're like, that's how they treat everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a pleasure having you, Dr. Esoimeme. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation. And I know that, anyone listening, who's going to this or has gone to this, will definitely relate, and hopefully they can find their voice.
Yes.
Like we did, and they can learn how to speak up for themselves, and they can learn to intervene on time. Because the thing is on time, right? Before it becomes a catastrophe, or before it becomes a thing where they're talking about letting you go from your program, or, because I said, trust me, we've seen those settings happen before. We were fortunate that didn't happen, but I've heard of it.
It does happen.
Yes, where people put on a probation, it didn't get any better because they felt like they didn't have any support, they didn't have none of that, and they got fired.
Right.
from your programs, and some were lucky enough to get into other programs who actually then they got into a different environment that saw their worth.
Yeah.
And the contrast was like night and day. Like, how did they fire you? Like, you're so awesome and amazing. Like, why did they let you go? But what was the difference? The only difference was the environment.
Yeah.
Was the people. Like, it's the same training, like the same individual, the same one person, but what changed was the environment that they were put in. Yeah. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And I'm looking forward to having more and more discussions down the line. And I do feel like I found a sister today.
I am.
All right, it's been a pleasure. And so join us, and this is going to be on YouTube. Those of you that are watching, comment, likes, just tell us anything that you think, you would like to hear, or what do you think? What do you think else? What else do you think could be done? We've given a lot of suggestions here today, but what else do you think that can be done, so that we can fix this? Because no one is going to fix it but us physicians. Like, if we're waiting for some other group or whatever, it's not going to happen. We know we're the ones in it, and only us can fix it. Yeah. So thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe, and invite your fellow physician to come join this amazing physician community. See you next episode. Thank you.